Thank you so much. I like to extend my sincere gratitude to the organizing committee for inviting me. It's really touching to see many familiar faces, and also thank you to the people attending. I like to go back to what Professor Shapiro just said about Dan's presentation, but I'll try to gesture toward that at the end of the presentation. The summer school of the École de Philosophie d'Épinal-de-Fleuriel, launched in 2011 and resumed in 2017, was dedicated to a new critique of anthropology. One summer, our annual gathering had for welcoming message, Sogno, dunque sono. I dream, therefore I am, and aim to rethink the honorific condition necessary for the production of human knowledge. Our conversations were based on the shared understanding that the place from where dreams are shaped, produced, and shared is an organological scene that calls for a certain kind of taking care of our capabilities to project ourselves beyond our current milieu. This anthropotechnique of the capacity of knowing and inventing found its symbol in the flying fish, the mascot of Bernard's school, the fetish of our endless gatherings that brought us to the United States, the Netherlands, the UK, and France. A flying fish was the symbol of the noetic soul, intermittently enacting forms of distance and associative gathering to better engage, return, and thus transform the milieu in which it evolves. Today, as we gather to ponder about the memories we have for the future, I like to dedicate this moment of thought to a certain fish, the ones Augustin endlessly loves to capture, the ones dying in a sea of plastic, and the one hanging in Bernard's office, petrified by the shared and absolute verticality of the standstill. This image of thought is a projection of a scene where the madness of our times exceeded the realm of the pensable with an A, concluding in a final acting out that forever changes the locality of our intermittent existence. I would like then to write less about the memories I have for the future and more about the dreams we might have the audacity to share in a collective gesture for penser and penser, about the modes of existence of the soul that inhabits us all. Modes that are noetechnic, psychic, and collective. Ones that find agency and potential in the encounters it creates and the relations it forges. In these modes and modalities of becoming together in the world resides future's powers against the technological rules of law. Since the second tome of Bernard's La Technique et le Temps, the late philosopher warned against the disorienting and disrupting effects of technological advancement, underlining the procedures and condition of programmatology, as seen in calendars, cardinality, rhythm, and synchronized structures of tertiary retention. For Stiegler, this has created systemic delays, mainly provoked by newly engendered technogenetic structures onto traditionally anchored sociogenetic operations. Technogenesis was then conceived as being structurally preempting forms of sociogenetic relations, proving that the general economy of the program was preventing the general organology so fundamental to the noetic life of the soul, what we call the co-individuation of minds, bodies, social organization, and techne in a 2014 international colloquium organized by the No Technics Collective, marking the 20th anniversary of the publication of Bernard's landmark book. As a collective, we affirmed that the digital has to become an amplifying structure of reticulation, meaning that it must develop processes in which new relational modalities toward techniques are deployed. This reticulation defines the temporality of individuation and is based on the expansion, sharing, and care of transductive unities. As a vital operation of reticulation, transduction needs to be addressed from different points of view: physics, logics, psychology, but also institutions, governments, and power dynamics of modulation as seen in racial and gender-based discrimination. In this context, the governance of memory, behaviors, and invention is key to understanding both our political and cultural condition in an era of massive disruption, one that annihilates capacities and the necessary intermittent fluctuations of operations of thoughts, care, love, and long-term circuits of investment. In this context, the discretization of space and time put forward by the digital challenges and crystallized in scenes of disruption the very principle of individuation as it operates according to a time flow of processuality. However, it is this precise tension between different modalities of temporalities, the discrete and the processual, that's maybe where we can find a key to extend the question of the intermittence, that creates a metastable milieu suitable for a new critique of our cultural and political condition. For Stiegler, it is within this constant friction and confrontation that one can find the resources to address the malaise of our times, one that he defined as being created by the disruptive divorce between computational understanding and reason. For Bernard, the battlefield of the Anthropocene is a tragic one. It begins at the end. It requires us to work backwards. It emerges out of melancholy in the locality of being not dead yet. As an epoch dating the human impact on Earth, the Anthropocene looks like a graveyard to come, one in which the story of humankind is writing its own epigraph in real time. The tragedy of our moment, or the tragic moment of our action, means having to act despite knowing it is too late, or looking for a miracle, a hope in the dark. This strategy produces the sensation that humankind must necessarily face its own limit, its own intermittence. And these limits are telling a story that is not a happy one. We cannot keep up with the pace of such entropic boneyard. When it comes to the massive eradications of people and species, no one can justify the feelings of sympathy that proliferate against a background of intellectual numbness. Today, more than ever, knowledge is a regime that imposes a relation to power. In this context, the West is lacking humility about its limit, and the Anthropocene is growing out of a strategy of scarcity that fuels centuries of land grabbing, bodily dispossession, and systemic forms of violence. The Anthropocene thus poses the question of relations to power in new and drastic ways. Power is both an ontological and epistemological problem that develops into reflections on philosophies of being and nature of knowledge. As such, power defines both a logical category from possibilitas and an ontological one from potentia, that which determines the real as potential, potentiality, and potestas, that which determines power, both intuitive and sovereign power more broadly. While this dual aspect is interrelated in most political theories, the challenge of power in the Anthropocene is defined by the collapse of these two categories. Not only does the logical category of power infiltrate the ontological potential of being in the world, but political puissance also shapes the will from within the changes imposed upon our ontological realm. Today, renewed questions of rules and the technological outsourcing of decision-making into predictive analytics emerge from the trepid responses to growing fascist politics on a global scale. While the dissolution of modern sovereignty and the emergence of a new one named empire has been discussed by theorists such as Foucault, Deleuze, Hare, and Negri, this dissolution does not erase the operative function of state power in the Anthropocene. Here one cannot but revisit the rules of law as a systemic principle morphing into new individualizing practices. Individual power defines a relation to power based on division as both logical and ontological dimensions. And here comes back the intermittence. While Foucault proposes that we think about such relations to power in terms of domination, exploitation, and subjectivation, for him, these categories establish dividing practices in which the subject is either co-divided inside himself or divided from others. However, the Anthropocene has systemized division beyond these dichotomies and has pushed relations to power beyond the framework of disciplinary societies. The latter defines an individual subjected to new forms of control and to continuous flow of signals that confine its becoming to a set of collected data, as seen in the exemplary work of Antoinette Rouvroy. For Deleuze, what matters is the study of sociotechnics of control that impose a new regime of open access confinement. Digital forms of power impose a shift from a power that controls to a power that operates. Instead of an archaeology of power relation, I suggest to turn to an alagmatic of individual power. The goal is to address the shift of power dynamics in today's digital societies, where power is not so much about controlling a structure of relation, but constantly modifying it. Simondon defines the operation as an ontological complement of the structure, that is, that which reveals or modifies the structure and vice versa. Because each relation implies an operation, relations to power are operations of power. The operative dynamic of power is a relational one. It conditions the possibility of interaction. Instead of an archaeology that will look at relations as a geological accumulation of social conditions, one in may be an alagmatic of operation that takes relations of power as continuous modification of social structures. That's probably where I may want to respond to Dan in an article on cybernetics. In Simondon, I developed the concept of neo-colonial forms of technologies and the technology of neo-colonial episteme. And to the layers of dates that you offer, I want to remind us that when cybernetics is being implemented, the apartheid is implemented and the Israeli state is implemented. And the concomitant implementation of DNA coding, biological understanding of race, cannot be sought outside of the cybernetic loop of governance and control. And I think it's very important, and Hare mentioned the responsibility of our generation, and it's to not omit very important geopolitical relations that emerge concomitantly and certainly induced by the technologies that we are all so interested in interrogating. So today, to counteract the technological rule of law, one might have to ponder on the philosophical question of synthesis in the age of disruption, an age defined by the systemic dismantlement of the condition of possibility of collective potential, imagination, projection, dreams, and desire. Scenes of disruption implies that in order to critically change our epoch and to transform the lack of it into a memorable event fruitful for the design of a social network of collective actions, one needs to create a distance, the same one that theory shares with theater, the place from which actions are seen. In bearing witness to tragic announcements of anthropocenic disruption, one also cultivates a distance, a noetic intermittent distance, where the value of bonds, les liens, can replace the ones of goods, les biens. To sustain alternative forms of investment and localities, understood as culture and care, I draw attention to the immensely imprevisible force of synthesis, its capacity to transduce knowledge into operation of sustainable, collaborative, and innovative changes. To conclude, and to build localities of becoming where forms of existence are valued and exceed forms of subsistence, let me end on the last hypothesis. To form dreams, Bernard told us endlessly that one has to engage in the organological structures of our times, while developing pharmacological operations that can unleash the power as in puissance to revolutionize our tragic condition. This implies that there will be another day, another night, another journey around the sun. It is between the earth and the sun that Bernard concluded his last acting out, his grandiose bifurcation. We found ourselves in the exosomatic realm of his tertiary retentions, the ones that make this event possible, and the pharmacon of it all, pensable. Nous defines a mode of sensing the world, of belonging to it intuitively. It is not the brain as in human intelligence. It is an inventive category that takes the soul at its main force of becoming intermittently. In this context, the soul is not necessarily human, and most individuals, including a rock, can possess a nous. No politics defines a relational politics that is located between psychic, technic, and collective individuals. This politics takes seriously the idea that any form of psychological reality is a transductive relation expanding between the world and the self. No politics addresses the politics that targets no diversity, which includes no techniques, no ethics, and no aesthetics, among others. As such, no politics designates a politic that focuses on the milieu of psychic and collective behaviors proper to a living organism. Such a milieu, or homeworld, is not simply an environment, nor a universe of science. The milieu of our contemporary no-politics is a field of intensity where living organisms are being acted upon by power strategies that either restrain or expand their value and signification. Because there is no milieu that exists in itself, because there is no en soi of the milieu, a no-politics of the milieu must now focus on the operative power that is now shaping the no-technics, psychic, and collective individuals on a massive scale. Thank you.